Hi, friends. Taylor from Doomed to Fail. We have 13 more episodes to put through re-releasing for you. As a reminder, our beginning episodes, our first 26, we did 2 stories per episode, but they ended up getting really long. So we decided to do them Monday and Wednesday, releasing twice a week. And then on Fridays, I'm re-releasing our older episodes as shorter like clips. So this one is on the famous love of Mark Antony and Cleopatra that caused wars, and there's intrigue, and there's incest, and there's fighting, and there's murder, and there's a snake, and it's a very, very fun story. So we hope you enjoy. Any questions or concerns or ideas, we're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com. Thanks.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Okay, Taylor, we're recording.
Accepts.
You accept? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Doom to Fail, the podcast where one of us is going to be sick for a while. And this time it's Taylor's turn. I'm joined here by Taylor, my co-host. Hi, Taylor.
Hello, how are you?
I'm probably better than you.
Yeah, I was sick this morning. I couldn't really talk when I woke up, and now I feel like a little bit better, but still like kind of dizzy.
Yeah, so we were discussing changing up the production schedule and recording more than one of these a week so that we can have moments where we're sick and not have to hop on and record while feeling shitty. So we'll make that a reality.
Vacation and stuff. Yeah,
Exactly.
we'll do it.
Exactly.
We'll get there.
So Taylor, we are going to go through our drink schedule at this point. So why don't I tell you mine, and then you can tell me yours. Mine is going to be Coors, which is a taste of the Rockies, because we're going to go to Colorado for the true crime side of our story today. So for my drink, we're going to be having some Coors because we are going to be in Colorado for the true crime side of our story today. And Coors is a taste of the Rockies. Apparently, they say that they brew it using water from the Rockies, I believe. But mostly they're famous because their cans turn blue, or the mountain turns blue when it's cold enough to drink. So I don't know why I'm giving people a lecture on what Coors is, as though people don't know it's like the most ubiquitous beer in the world, but there you go.
I'm like, is there a Coors that's not a Coors Light? Is there like a not light Coors?
I feel like I've seen like a yellow, tan, or champagne colored Coors before that feels like that might be the regular Coors.
That's right. It's like a champagne color, dude, right?
Yeah, but good for them. Good for their marketing and branding people because that's more. I mean, when I think of Coors, I think Coors Light. Actually, kind of with Bud Light too.
Totally. I feel like I don't know anyone who's like, oh, I'll just have like a Budweiser, not light. But I don't know what that tastes like, so maybe I should try that too.
Should
like
we?
Bud Light, you're like, I'm gonna drink a lot of these, so I'm gonna pretend this is like a diet food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another podcast idea. We'll reminisce about different alcohol things that we like. Katie of the Schmidt clan, I'm calling them, texted me this week saying there's definitely farting. They listened to the last episode and said there's farting from 7 minutes to 11 minutes. I went back and listened. People, it is my dog. Who would record themselves farting and then publish it publicly and advertise it publicly? Like, why would I do that?
I mean, I'm sure people do that and they get a lot of money for it, but that's a whole different ball game.
That's another genre. We are not. That is not the demographic I'm shooting for here. It's obviously coming from my end, but why would I do that? Because so Luna's gonna shake. When she shakes, her collar makes sounds, and then she'll tap on glass when she wants to be let out, or she'll like whine in the background. Like, I need to figure out what I'm doing with Luna. It's a dog.
That's so funny.
It is. I would never deliberately record myself farting and then posting it publicly to the world. So, I don't know. Kincaid, Katie, y'all have a very similar perspective on this.
Yeah, maybe it's a you problem.
It's a them problem. Anyways, that's my rant. That's my quick rant for the day. But I'll okay. So let's get to your drink, Taylor.
Awesome. So I also have a little bit of notes from last week and some things I wanted to share. I'm drinking a hot toddy because my throat hurts, but that has nothing to do with my story.
Are you actually drinking a hot toddy?
Uh-huh.
That is awesome. I love hot toddies.
Made it. It's delicious. I made it out of honey and a little bit of lemon and some tea and some whiskey.
Did you use regular lemons?
Yes.
Okay, so here's a secret to like a phenomenal hot toddy. Use Meyer lemons, which are sometimes hard to come by,
Are
but
they a
if
little
you
sweeter?
they're a little sweeter. They add this little kick to it that
Mm,
just completely because it's acidic, so it balances out the harshness of the bourbon, which is amazing. So yeah,
nice.
we really need to start an alcohol podcast, I think.
I'm in. That sounds fine.
Yeah,
It's the thing that's gonna kill me, so that's cool.
yeah, there you
Um,
go.
cool. Okay, so I have some notes from last week. R.E. Joe Rogan. Juan from California says Vars is on the wrong side of the pitchfork on this one.
Oh, sorry, Juan from California. How convenient. Is this Juan Carlos, your husband?
It is my husband, yes, and
Yeah,
I'm
there we
laughing because
go.
it's also a Rick and Morty reference, which I thought was funny.
That's funny.
And then George from New York, who is my friend George, who lives in New York, says, "Here's what I'm willing to agree with about Joe Rogan. He has a podcast, he has guests, he has an audience. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk."
I mean, he nailed it. Nobody can
Um,
deny that.
Yep, all true, all true. I also have been having like a rough week in general because I'm just like wasn't feeling well. And so I've been thinking like I should be nicer to people who believe in God and not be such a jerk about it and have some balance, but I'm also just so mad. And I also saw something this week from a dad on LinkedIn who's like, how can dads do work-life balance? And I've just like never been so mad after reading that. And so I was like, I was wondering if there's some sort of like strangle thing you can buy to like strangle it to like get the rage out. That's where I'm coming from.
I
Um,
don't have children, so I don't understand the sentiment.
it's just like it's like a mom thing. Dads have no problem. Dads get paid more money. Dads are fine, you know? So whatever.
I
So
can't
I've just
speak
been
to
like
it.
I've been kind of mad this week. And another thing I've been annoyed about is, which I've slacked you about, is I've been like, hey, everybody, like our podcast and rate it. And then like no one does it. And I'm like, just do it. Because I'm a terrible salesperson. So I'm just like, I said so, so do it. So I'm going to work on our pitch. I just added us to LinkedIn. I'm just trying to get in front of more people. So
I
that's
mean,
what I've been up to.
you gotta offer people something. Like I offered in that Facebook channel to send people autographed pictures of our face.
Yeah,
Nobody
and
took us up on it.
35 people saw it and like two people liked it. So no one wants that. I don't know. We have to think of something else.
We gotta think of someone else. Okay. Yep.
Um,
Alcohol recipe book by Farza Taylor.
I love that. I love
There you
that.
go.
So I also, before I get started, wanted to say thank you to some people who are actively listening, to especially Christine and Kelly, who've been giving me a lot of feedback, and I know they listen to it every week, and it's really fun. So thank you both. Okay, so now after I've that's those are my notes and kind of where I'm coming from. But so of course we're doing like relationships and events and things that are failures throughout history. This relationship is one of the ones that kind of comes up first whenever you Google historical relationships that were like tumultuous and ended in tragedy. So I also was making a timeline that I showed you, and I'll post it on our socials. But I'm like, what timeline am I in when I'm talking about my historical things? And so much of it is like after 1600, which makes sense because there's records and it tracks, but there's so much stuff that happened before that. So I'm like, how can I find stuff that actually is ancient? And then it gets me into my two types of existential dread. I have like the future existential dread, like when will the robots kill us? When will we kill each other with nuclear weapons? When will the aliens kill us? When will nature kill us? How will nature kill us? All those things that are normal.
You gotta stop watching the news.
I know. I also have historical existential dread, which is like, what don't we know? How can we possibly know anything? How are we gathering these stories from like remnants of clay pots and coins? And there's just so much that I don't know about, and I wish that we knew more. So, anyway, this is the best that I can do in 20 minutes of a topic that people spend their whole entire life studying, from like bits and pieces of pottery and the stories of the victors. So, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. It's kind of true, and it might as well be true, and it doesn't matter. It's very stressful. Um,
Is your point that whoever wins is the one who defines the story?
yeah. hmm
Yeah, that's fair.
Especially with these like super ancient stories, I just don't know. But I'm going to tell you as much as I can about Cleopatra and Mark Antony.
Oh, that's a
Um,
great one. Yeah, you know what?
yeah.
When you said the oldest story, I thought Cleopatra, and I was like, who was the guy? And I kept thinking it was that guy who Colin Farrell played in that movie, the biopic, where, oh my God. I have to edit this out. This is terrible. What's her
It's
name?
also
Angelina
there's also
Jolie was the mom.
oh, I don't remember
Remember? And then the asp killed her.
the asp kills Cleopatra, potentially,
So who's Colin
allegedly.
Farrell? Wait, Colin Farrell's Mark Anthony then. I am right, right?
I guess I didn't watch that, but probably. There's also Caesar. She also was with Caesar for a little bit. So we'll get to that.
Hold on. I'm gonna look this up right now. What is the movie?
I didn't watch that movie. I did watch
Alexander. That's what it is.
okay.
Has nothing to do with your story. Yeah, I definitely have to edit this out.
Well, it's like similar, there's so many there's so many stories like of these dramas and there's so many civil wars in this story that I'll talk about like just it's constant battle. So if you're thinking of like what it was like to live at this time and we are pre-zero, so we're in the BC times, which is as I've already said, is really hard for me to go backwards in time, but I'll give you some dates. So we start in BC in this story. And I didn't watch that many like dramas, but I did listen to A Rest History podcast. Definitely, I've learned the story from Dan Carlin. I watched Ancient Rome on Netflix, which is like half documentary, half show, which is kind of fun. And I also just was looking at an article on history.com. And then I don't know if I told you this, but when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an Egyptologist. That was like my dream. I like
It's
loved
really
it.
cool. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah. So I
do
had
you think we should go to Dan Carlin and ask him for sponsorship money at this point, given that we plugged him like every other episode?
yes.
All right.
I
I don't
think we
know how to
should go
get.
to his house
Uh,
in some way.
okay, I don't know how to get a hold of him. I guess we need an agent. Okay,
Yeah.
this might be a longer process than I thought.
Does anyone know Dan Carlin? Tell him we said hello. I mean,
Just write to us and let us know.
yeah. Um, oh, he's the best. Yeah, so I just loved ancient Egypt history. I think it was like, I don't know if it's still a big thing for like kids to know a ton about, but I had like hieroglyphic stamps. And I remember in like the 90s when my family moved to Las Vegas and the Luxor was brand new, I was just like, oh my God, just so excited about it. So loved hearing the history of Egypt because it's super interesting. It's also interesting as I like learn more, like the civilization of Egypt didn't change for thousands of years. And now this story is going to be the very end of Egypt as like being ruled by Egyptian pharaohs. So we're at the tail end of it. So, speaking of tail end and timelines, here are our main characters. There's Julius Caesar. He was born in 100 BC. There's Mark Antony. It's not Anthony, it's Antony, Antony, born Marcus Antonius in 83 BC. And then in 69 BC, Cleopatra the seventh Philopator was born in Egypt. So just thinking about, I wrote, oh Christ. So here's just like a little bit of their ages. Caesar's 17 years older than Mark Antony. He's 31 years older than Cleopatra, and Mark Antony is 14 years older than Cleopatra. If that matters, I'm just telling you how old they are.
Does it
Uh,
matter or no?
I mean, kind of. I mean, we have talked about like huge age differences. I think 31 years is a big age difference for
That's fair.
people dating.
Yeah.
But they also were very similarly politically inclined and everything. So I don't think it was just that, but it is a pretty big difference. So this is something that, like I said, someone will spend their whole entire life studying and talking about, and I'm going to try to do it in 20 minutes, but I'll try to benchmark some dates around Cleopatra and her life. And then also remember we're going backwards because we're in BC time. So Julius Caesar, in a nutshell, and I think I mentioned him in the Nero episode as well. He is a general and a dictator of Rome. He was a big part of the end of the Roman Republic. So at this time, when we're in like the 50s, the 50 BCEs, Rome is having a ton of civil wars. So specifically, he's Caesar is in a civil war with Pompey, so Pompey, who was once part of the Triumvirate, which is a group of three who ruled Rome together around 60 BC. So that was Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus were trying to kind of stop the Roman Republic and turn it into an empire. And they had the Triumvirate, which was like the first group of people being like, we're going to our rule is higher than that of like the Senate, of like the democratic rule.
Yeah, this is just expansion, right? It's like a land grab.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pompey, who's one triumvirate, him and Caesar are potentially like they're friends. Like they're talking about, doing this, ruling together. And Pompey marries Caesar's daughter, Julia. And by all accounts, they did really love each other. But Julia died in childbirth, and it devastated Pompey, and his relationship with Caesar was never the same, which is like a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened if Julia had lived because then they would have continued to kind of rule together. But they started to drift apart now that they weren't family anymore. So that's happening in Rome. There's a big civil war. In 51 BC, over in Egypt, Cleopatra becomes co-ruler when her dad, Ptolemy VII, dies. She co-rules always with a man who's both her sibling and her husband, which is a thing. So she marries her brother, Ptolemy VIII. So it's a whole thing. It's a lot of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Egyptian rulers. It's a whole bunch of marrying your brother or your cousin or whatever. Like it's very much like we've talked about a million times. Like you shouldn't do that. It makes bad
Yeah.
rulers because of
At, the,
genetics.
at this point, it just feels like there's so many of these out there at this that we've already covered. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
the shock value of it's worn off.
yeah, it's bananas. So she's married to her brother. He's younger than her, and they're co-ruling Egypt together. So just to talk about Cleopatra for a little bit, like as a person, obviously we don't know a ton about her. That's true. Like we know like the records that people have of her. She is one of the last pharaohs of Egypt. Civilization's been around for thousands of years, but we're here at the tail end. She was very smart and very charming. She spoke a ton of languages. One of the actual like kind of firsthand accounts comes from Plutarch. I think it's about 100 years after she died, but he wrote about that people said that she was known for her beauty and charm. She could speak several languages. She was very intelligent and quick-witted, captivating personality. She was very popular. So this is all stuff that we don't know for sure, but I think like the one thing that is maybe unfair to her and her like intellectual prowess is that conventionally she's not very pretty. So there's like busts and coins with her on them, and she's not like a perfect like beauty. So some people say that she was, and I feel like they might be using that as an excuse to be like, this is how she got so powerful because she was so beautiful and seductive. But she also like other people are like she wasn't that beautiful. So it's like a couple things that we like know about her that are facts. She was Greek, so she was from Macedonia, like Dan Carlin says, and which is in Greece, and she comes from like a long line of Greek emperors, of pharaohs of Egypt who are not ethnically Egyptian. She was one of the only pharaohs who bothered to learn how to speak Egyptian, just like Catherine the Great bothered to learn Russian when like other people hadn't. And people have had issues with like the movies that she's portrayed in, like Elizabeth Taylor and Gal Gadot is about to play her because they're white. But Cleopatra wasn't ethnically African or Egyptian. She was Greek. The issue that I have with those actors playing her is that they're gorgeous.
I
You
was gonna
know?
say, like,
Yeah.
you have Elizabeth Taylor, who's like, I guess, considered back in the day and even today, like one of the most iconically beautiful women that's ever existed. But you're saying
hmm
that she looked more like Buzz from Home Alone. Like, I don't know if
She
like,
was like
well,
a normal person. Like she wasn't like this astounding beauty, and I don't know if that matters. Like that's just I don't know. I don't know where that fits into her story, and I'd have to think about it for like years to try to make sense of it. But she wasn't like striking beautiful. Like Gal Gadot was distractingly beautiful, you know?
yeah.
Like
Yeah, well, and it's also hard to tell because you're looking at like renditions that
yeah.
it's a painting. It's hard to really visualize. I mean, I'm looking at one of them, which was, it looks like a modern painting based off of a bust of
Yeah.
her face.
I mean the ones that you would like look at the coin. Like the coin of her is probably like the closest.
Yeah, she's got a Roman nose. Like you can tell,
Yeah.
she's definitely got a Roman nose. Like that's normal. That's
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So like some of my opinions on this are like beauty is subjective, A. So whatever. Are historians writing away her power as something she got from being so beautiful and sexy? Are they harping too much on her not being beautiful? Does it matter? Like I don't know, but just so we know, like the answer, I think, and I think that we've maybe talked about this before in like the realm of like dating and relationships. It's just like be cool and people will like you, you
Yeah.
know? So like she was cool. And so regardless of what she looked like, people liked her. And she got some dudes to like her too. So that's a little bit about her, maybe what she looked like, maybe where she came from. In 48 BCE, she is forced to flee Egypt. She goes to Syria. Her and her brother husband, Ptolemy VIII, start a civil war. So there's a civil war in Rome and now a civil war in Egypt. So her and her brother are fighting for the pharaoh throne. In 48 BC, Julius Caesar arrives in Alexandria, which is a port city in Egypt. So this is where a lot of this like action takes place. It's at like the tip top of the Nile. And Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. So it's been around for a while by this time. And it's a center of learning, culture, diverse populations like Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, other cultures. A lot of people live there, as well as obviously a ton of enslaved people live there as well. But it's the port city, lots of trade, grain, papyrus. Like it sounds very fun. Like it sounds like very bustling. The Library of Alexandria is still there. It has between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls, all this like information. That lighthouse that we talked about is one of the wonders of the ancient world. That was still standing. Education was really highly valued. So it's like a pretty cosmopolitan city for being in BC times.
Yeah, sounds like King's Landing, kind of.
Yeah, it probably is. Like all these are very similar to like things that we've heard in fantasy things. So we're in 48 BC. Pompey and Caesar have just had a huge battle. I cannot pronounce this. It's the Battle of Pharsalus, and a lot of Romans died. And so I've been saying there's been a bunch of civil wars. Like these are legions that are going back and forth between civil wars. There's been so many. So imagine if in like the U.S. Civil War, the North and South fought, and then it ended, and they were like, great, now it's East and West, and now it's tall people versus short people, and now it's like this versus this, and it just goes on
Jeez.
forever. And so like you're fighting someone that you fought with last year, you know?
Yeah,
You're like, this year we're enemies because of something new. And
sounds tiring.
yeah. So Pompey and Caesar, they used to be almost related because of Caesar's daughter. Now they're in this fight. So many people have died. Pompey gets to Alexandria a little before Caesar, and he asks Ptolemy to help him. So he says, "Help me defeat Caesar." And Ptolemy wants to have Caesar on his side. So in his own civil war against Cleopatra. And so he cuts Ptolemy, Cleopatra's husband, brother, cuts off Pompey's head and gives it to Caesar when Caesar arrives because he knows that Caesar's coming to Alexandria as well. And he does this to be like, hey, I want you to be on my side. Look what I did for you. I killed Pompey. And
Such a morbid gift.
it is. And Julius Caesar, surprisingly, is not happy. He's like, ew. Like he's upset. And there's like some things that are like, it's a lot of conjecture, like why is he upset? Like they've been fighting for years. They used to be friends. They're fighting for years. Tons of like normal people have died during these like battles and this huge war. But I imagine, this is what I think happened reading about this as little as I have, that seeing the head of someone who you used to be friends with, who was married to your daughter, who almost brought you a grandchild, it's a little bit of like a fuck, how did I get here? Just
I
like,
mean,
oh
but like
shit.
all like I don't know. I think just as a general rule, kind of like we always say, like don't kill your family. Also, just never give somebody a human head. Like it's just never going to be
Yeah,
received well.
no, that's definitely fair. It's a good life rule. I think I can stick by that one. Yeah, it totally makes sense. So like definitely not like a silver platter with like a thing over the top, like that's not great.
Yeah.
So Caesar's not impressed, but he's in Alexandria, and now Ptolemy, it's hard to say Ptolemy because it starts with a P, so hopefully I'm getting it right, but it's Ptolomey. So Ptolemy is like, okay, well now Caesar, since you're not happy about this like great gift I bought you, he puts him sort of in jail in Alexandria and is trying to wait to figure out what his next step is. So while Caesar is stuck in Alexandria, Mark Antony is in charge of Rome. So he's been like a high up general in Caesar's army for a whole time, and he does a pretty bad job. He's just like living a nice life in Rome while people of Rome are starving, which we've seen again and again, and we're only on episode 13. But another thing that I think we could maybe stand by is it seems like if you just feed people, everyone will be happy. You know?
Yeah. There's got to be
Like,
something biologically in humans that once they attain a certain level of success, they just literally cannot think like normal
yeah, they
humans
just like
anymore.
can't can't remember that like, oh, maybe I should, spend money on the people that I rule rather than a gold hat, or like anything else. It's just so crazy.
Did you ever watch that interview that Ellen did with Bill Gates back in the day?
Mm-mm.
People would like ask him how much he thinks things cost, and he was like so
Oh,
comically off on it. I think he said like a banana is probably $20 because he just doesn't
oh my
know. Like he just
gosh.
they're so out of touch.
You're right. No, that's definitely fair. Like they're just like so far away from it that they can't even imagine like what do you mean you can't? Like Marie Antoinette saying let them eat cake. She didn't really say that, but like the idea is like, well, we have all this cake here. Why don't they just have this? People are like, no, they have nothing. Like you don't understand like what it's like to live on like that side of the spectrum.
Did she really
Totally.
say that? I could have sworn
No,
that I heard somewhere that she said something different.
she didn't say that. No,
Yeah.
no.
That
And
was
most of it, I
revisionism.
yeah, that's definitely revision. But she did not say that. But it's the same idea that like if you're living in a place where like you've never been hungry, you don't really understand what it could possibly be like for people who are
Yeah,
hungry.
of course.
So that's what's happening in Rome. There's also riots in Rome, tons of riots during this time. A lot of people are starving. Rome has a population of about 1 million people at this point. So there's a lot of people there, which is, a huge city even in now times. Famously, Cleopatra comes back to Alexandria. She sneaks in to come to Caesar's aid and asks him to take her side. So some of the rumors are that she came rolled up in a carpet. So like they brought him a carpet and it unrolled and she was like, "Ta-da! I'm here," or in like a linen bag, or like in a box, or like whatever. Like she came in like a fun way and surprised him because she had to sneak back in. And so he likes her. He likes her, likes the cut of her jib. He likes this like trick that she did. He likes that she speaks all these languages. She's really smart. He's in his 50s, she's in her 20s, but they see something in each other and they start a relationship. So in 47 BCE, Cleopatra gives birth to their son, who she names Caesarion. So they have one child together. And another thing about like Cleopatra being like this like crazy temptress, it's probably that she only had like two lovers in her whole life, and they were Caesar and Mark Antony. Like, that might have been it for her.
Sweet.
So the next year,
I'm by the way, Taylor, just so you know, I'm actually looking up if we named them cesarean sections because of this guy.
yeah, can you tell me more about that? Let me know what you find because I don't know what that means. It's
So
weird.
it's not spelled like the way we spell cesarean
Mm.
section, but let's see. I'm gonna put a finer point on this. Why do we call them cesarean sections? Roman law under Caesar decreed that all women who were so fated by childbirth must be cut open, hence cesarean. Other
Really?
possible Latin origins include the verb sedere, meaning to cut, and the term
Oh,
caesones, that was applied to infants born by post-mortem operations.
ew. That makes
That
sense. Like the mom
is,
dies, they just take it out. Gross.
yeah, but I don't like it. That isn't actually like whatever. So it is definitely Roman in nature, but we don't
Hmm.
know where the word actually originates from. But it sounds, I mean, it had to be like something related to this guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, again, like talking about like fake things, like in the new Game of Thrones show, The House of the Dragon, there's a ton of childbirth and death in childbirth, but when they do perform a cesarean, they're like the mom is not gonna live, they just cut her open. They're like, we have this is like its last chance to like get the baby out. And then I did also see something on Instagram a while ago about maybe when that was happening, that like midwives or whatever they're called in Africa have been performing them for like hundreds of years because they knew how to do things like wash their hands with alcohol and like make a small cut and get the baby and take care of the mom and like all the things that like we didn't figure out in the West until like 100 years ago,
Wow.
which is super interesting. Yeah. So anyway, also this dude's name's Caesarion, which is just that if it is related to that, it means cut and somehow whatever. So they have a son, his name's Caesarion, and then Caesar defeats Ptolemy the Eighth and restores Cleopatra to the throne of Egypt. Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother husband, dies in the Nile. He drowns while escaping. She may have had that might have been on purpose, like making sure that he didn't survive while he was escaping Alexandria. So the next thing that she has to do is marry her other brother, Ptolemy the Ninth, who I think is like an infant at this time. She just like has to be married to someone else in order to rule. She can't like technically do it by herself, which is dumb, but she's married to her infant brother now, but she's definitely like dating Caesar. And she also has her annoying sister, Arseny, killed. And in one of the podcasts I listened to, they described Arseny as the Prince Harry of Egypt. So you can make your own assumptions about how annoying she was. But I thought
Wait,
that
is
was
Harry
interesting.
annoying?
Yes.
Okay. You feel, see, we decide, I think, at some point, Taylor, that one of us feels strongly about one thing and the other one doesn't. Like, I don't have any opinion of him, so I'm gonna go with your version of who Harry is.
We just watched the South Park from this past season about him and Meghan Markle, where they do go on a worldwide privacy tour, and during the tour, Harry's like playing his drums and has a sign that says like "Leave us alone, stop staring at me." It's really funny because they're like holding these signs that are like "Stop looking at me, leave me alone, we want our privacy," but they're like yelling it in the middle of all the town squares. So like
Yeah,
that's an idea what they're doing right now. Yeah. So
South Park nails
all
it.
Yeah, so all of her siblings are dead. She's co-ruling with her baby sibling. They stay in Alexandria for a while, and they both go to Rome. And so we've talked about this before. 44 BCE, Ides of March, March 15th. Julius Caesar's assassinated. He's stabbed to death in the Senate. After his death, Cleopatra returns to Egypt. So she was there while he was murdered, and she had to like get out fast. So she
Wow.
got out of Rome super fast, took Caesarion with her. They went back to Alexandria and they did some ruling of Egypt there together. In 41 BCE, Mark Antony is now part of the second triumvirate, so a second group of three dudes who are trying to rule Rome together. And he summons Cleopatra to Saris, which is a place where he like wanted to get her to be an ally for to him. So they have this meeting. They might have met before, but the myth around this meeting is that she arrived on like a golden barge, like carried by enslaved people with like purple sails and oars of silver, and she made herself look like the goddess Aphrodite, and there was like a gold canopy, and she people dressed like Cupid, and just like a really big like show going into to meet him. And Mark Antony loved it because he thought he was he thought he was the embodiment of the Greek god Dionysus. So like he was a lot. And
She
but he loved the show.
she loves these grand entrances.
Yeah. She loves it. And I think that's probably because she knows that like these dudes love that shit. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, you make me feel special." So that was totally working for them. And so they had a lot of fun together. They had a group called the Imitable Lovers, which was like a group of people that would hang out every night and have like a game night and drink a lot and eat a lot and like just have a lot of fun. By 37 BCE, Mark Antony and Cleopatra have had three children together: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selina, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. They rule Egypt for a little while during this time as well. The rule is loose because they're children, but the children are like definitely heirs to the Egyptian throne. And so they have those kids in 37 BCE. They're living together. They're super happy. But Mark Antony's actually been married this whole time from 40 to 32 BC. So in the middle of this, he was married to Octavia the Younger. And she seems nice. They had some kids, but he wants to marry Cleopatra and they get divorced. And in 32 BC, he does marry Cleopatra. So she's his like fifth wife. He's already been like married a bunch of times, but they finally do get married. And then we're almost to the end, and there's so much more that happens during this. But so the second triumvirate is Mark Antony, a man named Lepidus, and Octavian. Octavian sounds like Octavia, you may have noticed, is the brother of Octavia, who Mark Antony was married to, and he's pissed because he's like, you were very clearly having another family with Cleopatra in like
Oh,
under
so this
my
wasn't normal. This isn't like how they just do things.
yeah, like he they, like it was like kind of normal, everybody knew, but like also Octavian was like fuck you for doing this to my sister, and got was like there are other things, but he was like really mad. And so this turns into another civil war between people. And Cleopatra and Mark Antony are on one side, and Octavian is on the other side. And there's a big battle called the Battle of Actium. So many people die because of these people's personal problems, but
Yeah.
but Cleopatra and Mark Antony, they lose. They lose the battle. They flee to Egypt. Antony knows that they're defeated. As a rumor, this feels maybe a little too romantic to be true, but that he hears that Cleopatra is already dead, so he stabs himself. And then he finds out that she's not dead, and they bring him to her, and he dies in her arms, which is like Romeo and Juliet. And also, there is a Mark Antony and Cleopatra Shakespeare play that I have not seen or read, but it sounds a little too good to be true. But he dies first. He dies by
So,
suicide, stabs himself in the stomach.
oh, so that is what happened.
Yeah.
Wait, so why do you
Yeah.
say you don't believe it?
Well, no, I don't believe necessarily that he killed himself because he thought that she was already dead. You know,
I see. I see.
like they
So he
were
might
like
have just
separated. Yeah,
had suicidal ideations on his own
yeah,
volition. Yeah.
yeah. Because they knew that they were like going to be in trouble because they just lost this big battle and they've lost control of Rome and Egypt. So she does get to organize his funeral. She knows that he has died, and the sort of next step for Cleopatra is there is a thing that they do in Rome when you return from battle is you get to have a triumph, and a triumph is like a big parade. So one thing that Caesar did a long time ago was he had his own triumph, which you're technically not allowed to do. It has to be like approved by the Senate, and people are really mad, but it's like a huge parade where you're like, I am victorious, I came back, and you parade through Rome with, your spoils of war. And one of the spoils of Octavius winning this battle was going to be Cleopatra. He was going to come back and kind of like parade her through Rome and be like, look what I did. I like, won the war and now this pharaoh is mine. So she doesn't want that to happen. She doesn't want to be a part of that at all. So she dies by suicide as well, possibly by asp. And that's the thing that maybe she had a snake bite her, or like a cobra, or like some kind of cool snake that killed her. It also could have been that she kept poison in like a hairpin to kill her to kill herself with. But either
Yeah,
way,
so
she died.
apparently, yeah, like that's an asp is just like the old-timey way to say any venomous snake, but it sounds like
Right.
it is probably a reference to a very specific Egyptian cobra.
How scary is that? If that was
What
like,
a horrible, horrible choice.
yeah, like what do you
To
do? Do you
lo
like put your hand near it, or do you like let it near you until it strikes, or do you like try to scare it? Like it's just so scary to be like, I purposely want this thing to bite me, even without knowing that, without the dying part, just like trying having to get that close
yeah,
to a snake, so scary.
because like I think the way that the venom of a cobra works is that it causes coagulation in the blood that's in your body. So it's not like
Yeah.
a chill death. It's like you're turning kind of to stone from the inside out. Like it's a horrible. I mean,
Oh,
just throw yourself off a roof or something. Like that sounds so much better.
it does sound so much better. So that sounds terrible. Hopefully it was quick, but now they're both dead. And the kids, their three children, do go back to Rome with Octavian. Octavian is actually he gets renamed as Augustus, so he's the first emperor of Rome. And we talked about this in one of our first episodes because the fifth emperor of Rome is Nero, so we're a little bit before Nero, who we talked about before. But Augustus, formerly Octavian, is the first emperor of Rome, and that now Rome is an empire and is going to do a whole bunch of stuff all in this ancient time. And then I guess the last thing that I wanted to say is, which I thought was interesting, is that their kids, the three kids that Mark Antony and Cleopatra had. So Caesarion dies in one of these battles. So she has those three kids left, and they go back to Rome, and they're raised by Octavia, who is the sister of the emperor and the ex-wife of their dad, and she raises all of the kids together, and they live for a while longer.
Hey, wasn't Nero's mom named Octavius?
She was, begins with an A,
Okay.
Agrippina.
Then wasn't he married to someone named Octavius?
I'm sure there was.
Maybe it's a common name.
It is, no, it's not. It's common as in like, yep, we're definitely in. This is the beginning of that family line. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because he is going to be, yeah, one of his spouses was Claudia Octavia. So she was one of the empresses, and she is, yeah, it's like they all know each other and they're all related and all of that stuff that we know. So she's part of the Claudian house, which is what Nero is, and yeah, so sort
Do you,
of.
do you remember during that episode how you said he went somewhere and was in like 1,000 singing competitions, and you were like, how many
Yeah.
do you think he won? And I literally sat there and was like, oh, let's see, if you look at the percentage number, and like, no, he won them all because he was obviously rigged. Like, it's like sitting there trying to actually do the math. Like, what do you think the percentage number will be of that? Like, yeah, fun times.
Uh, and that's the same thing. Like, you're doing this when people are starving. Like, what are
Yeah,
you doing? You know? So
disconnect, total
that just
disconnect.
sort of,
Like, these guys have no idea how much bananas cost.
yeah. Oh, no idea. Absolutely not. Yeah. So I am, I will definitely watch the Gal Gadot movie, the Cleopatra movie, whenever it comes out in a few years, because I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. But um, I don't know how much, I don't know what is true and what isn't true. But what I know is true is that Cleopatra was, the most powerful woman in ancient Egypt, and it was because she was able to, partner up with two of the most powerful men in Rome,
Okay,
because
I'm
she was
gonna
cool.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
Who is the right casting for Cleopatra?
Oh, that's a good question. Kind of. Want to say maybe Lady Gaga.
That is so good. Because I thought of Lady Gaga as while you were talking about how she like unfurled herself from a carpet, my first thought was Lady Gaga should totally do that at one of her concerts. And then when you
Yeah.
brought up that she met Mark Antony and like had this whole, festivity around her
Uh-huh.
coming out, but I was like, I'm positive I've seen Lady Gaga do that. So yeah, way to go. Solid
Yeah,
casting.
because she's pretty, but in a weird way. I
She's got a
guess.
Roman nose. She's definitely got a
Yeah,
Roman nose. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
And now that you said that, and I'm looking back at that picture of her, yeah, she looks like Lady Gaga. Like she
Hmm.
doesn't look as good as Lady Gaga, I would argue, but
Yeah, no, that's fair. Maybe, yeah,
closer to Lady Gaga than Elizabeth Taylor and Gal Gadot for sure.
yeah, exactly.
And it would be Mark Antony.
Um, you know who the person who and so I was listening to a and the rest is history podcast, and it's by author Tom Holland, who Dan Carlin like reads and talks about. So it's an author named Tom Holland. He's like a British historian. But in that episode, they were laughing, saying that Tom Holland, the actor, should play Mark Antony. That he would be.
That would not be good casting. Yeah, I'm gonna push back on that one. I think I'd be good at Mark Antony. I think I could make it work.
Yeah,
I got the nose, right?
you totally do.
Yeah, there you go. I'm ambiguous. You don't know what I am. I could be Greek. I could be Egyptian.
You
Who
have to cut your
knows?
hair though, have that like Roman Senate haircut, which is just like short hair. It's bizarre.
Definitely not doing that. I'm sticking with stuck my finger in a light
No
socket
one would know who
hairdo.
you were. Yeah.
I know. I know. That's my identity at this point. Awesome. That was very cool. So that's our second. Well, so this was Egypt and Rome kind of together.
Hmm.
So yeah, we got two Roman stories now, I think, under our belt, and there's
And
probably
two
so many
Egyptian
more.
stories. Well, so yes, okay. One thing I was gonna say first is like, so also our second Egyptian story and how like Egypt was so like it with the dad who killed his daughters and how like that was like honor killing. That was a huge thing about it, which I think is
Oh yeah,
interesting. Remember that? And then, but secondly, yeah, that's part of my historical existential dread is that like there's so many stories that like I that we'll never hear and that I want to know about. And when I hear things about like there was a Native American city in the middle of the United States that had, 50,000 people live there and they just found like the ruins of it. And you're like, what happened there?
yeah.
Like there's so many things that happened there. And then like I also feel like then with like that, that city in Turkey, that underground city in Turkey, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It is, what is it called? It's called Derinkuyu. So it's literally a farmer in Turkey was like clearing some land and found a hole and went into the hole, and it's a city that could have housed like 100,000 people underground.
Is this recent?
It was like in the past 20 years, but now they've been like excavating it, and there's like rooms and markets and stairs, and it was dark because all underground. And like, what happened in there? Isn't that crazy?
It's wild.
One Joe Rogan plug, I guess, that I have to say is another awesome show on Netflix is Ancient Apocalypse, which is like talking about, you know, but mostly it's like this idea, like what were these cities like, and like when their civilization ended, what did we lose, But Joe Rogan is in it as like the expert, and like
What?
we
Why is
we
he
were
an expert in this?
we were like 5 episodes in, and then all you're like, okay, the guy who is like the main guy is definitely kind of crazy, and you definitely can get the feeling that historians like are not his friend. They're not stoked on him. But and then like episode 5, he's like, here's my friend Joe Rogan. And we were like, oh no. Like, what is this show we're watching? But
Uh,
it's fun to think about existentially to be like, these cities and these places, we have like stones left. Like, what did we lose? We lost all the paper, we lost all the fabric, we lost all the stories. Like, what happened in the world before we remember it?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, with Alexandria, you mentioned Alexandria too. Like the burning of the Library of Alexandria, isn't that like the source of like all knowledge the world had? It was like the Wikipedia of the world, and then it was just
Yes.
gone.
Yes. But I've also heard recently that maybe that's not true. I'm like, God damn
You
it.
never know. So many, yeah. You never know what's so many different variables there. Like so many different ways to like interpret all that stuff, and apparently now it's not true. So there you
I
go.
know. So it's like
There's
I
no
don't know
objective
if any of
truth.
that's true. Yeah, there's no truth, but like it's fun to think about. Like, did that happen? Like, how cool is that for, to think about like, sneaking in and like getting your enemy's head on a platter and then being like, I don't know what's going on, and then like some girl comes into your room in like a sack and or carpet and she's like, let's roll together, and then you're like, okay, and then you go home and all your friends stab you to death. That's
I
a
mean,
wild
it
story.
it definitely sounds Shakespearean, which it was,
Yeah.
and it also kind of sounds like a Burning Man story. But maybe that's just me.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks for
Well,
listening.
Taylor, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And we'll transition over to, I'm going to call it a layup of the week because this story has gotten a ton of play. So I usually try and find things that are a little bit more obscure.